Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today in this last edition of Demo Days for 2021. What? How is that even possible? My name is Andrea Griffiths. I am Ala Colombia on Twitter, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here today to chat with an amazing staff engineering manager here at GitHub. I'm going to bring him up on screen. Hello, Darcy Clarke. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Awesome. Wonderful. No, I'm just happy to be here with you today. I love the way that we're going to close out the year with your demo. For those of you who are not familiar with Darcy and his amazing work, you can find him on Twitter at Darcy Clarke. I'm sorry. Yeah. And I will be sharing some other links throughout the conversation so that you can reach out to Darcy and catch up. But Darcy came to us via NPM acquisition, which happened early 2020, and it's absolutely mind-blowing to think that it's been that long, but a lot has happened since. A lot has happened in the npm space and also in the GitHub CLI space. So today Darcy is going to take us more inside. We're going to get to see behind the curtain. Hopefully we're going to be talking about workspace overrides and a lot more. So super thrilled to have you here, Darcy. Without further ado, let's just get started. I'll get out of the shot and bring up your presentation. Enjoy, everyone.
There we go. Thank you so much, Andrea. That was an amazing intro. And thank you so much if you're joining us live or you're watching this as a recording. It's the last demo days of the year, so I feel very special and privileged that you're joining us here today. I'm going to be diving into workspaces and overrides. And these are two big topics and two huge features for the npm CLI team that we've been working on for almost 2 years and have been speccing out and working with the community to try to make sure that we're delivering on that, on these two goals. We're also going to talk a little bit more on what we're doing in the future in the npm CLI space. And this is a lot of content, so I'm going to try get through all of it, have a couple demos along the way. And so wish me luck in terms of demo gods and live demos today. Let's hope everything stays up. So quickly, I want to dive into what we've been up to. npm, as Andrew said, was acquired in 2020 by GitHub, and npm, is trying to help you develop, run, secure, distribute, and discover packages. And the npm CLI as a package manager, that's our number one goal, is to help you manage your packages and do so in a way that keeps up with the pace of JavaScript. Because if you didn't know, the JavaScript ecosystem is huge and it continues to grow. There's 1.8 million packages now on the npm registry, and monthly we see over 150 billion, with a B, downloads and installations from that registry. So this is exponential growth. A year ago, or just, I would say a little over a year ago, we hit that 100 billion mark, and we've already hit 150. I'm really excited about where we're going, and so our team is trying to keep pace with this rapid growth, and obviously we're trying to ship great features to go along with it. Quickly, to talk to sort of the ships and how we got to where we are and some of the features that have landed along the way, I want to go back in time here and go to when we launched the initial V7, version 7, which was the first major release since we were acquired and had been in development going back to 2018, 2019, even in terms of the roadmap there. Some key features in npm v7 were installing peer dependencies again, introducing some new commands that we thought would help with quality of life, like npm explain, npm exec, which is sort of a map to npx, and then some improvements to npm audit, supporting yarn lock files, which was a huge win for us, and we think for the community as well. And also we tried to really, clean up our house and do some work in terms of performance. But of course, the thing that we're talking about today, which is workspaces shipped and workspace support shipped in npm v7. And I put the little term light there because when this first released, we didn't have many features to really take advantage of that workspace support. So the npm CLI was made aware of workspaces, and we introduced a new key called workspaces inside of package.json that we supported. But really, there wasn't a lot of tooling that sort of built on top of that. So going further in the actual V7 release line, we began shipping a whole bunch of new commands, including adding workspace awareness to a number of the legacy commands that we had in place. So two of the interesting new commands that we shipped were npm package and or pkg and npm diff. But along the biggest, I think, improvements that we made here in the last year or so, we're really shipping workspace and workspaces support. These are the two flags that allow for the traditional npm subcommands to essentially operate against the workspaces that you have defined in your package JSON. So that's sort of how we got here. V8, we actually, if you didn't know, we actually did ship another major release of the npm-cli just recently, back in September. And what this did was essentially the crux of this was to drop support for legacy unmaintained versions of Node, and that included Node 10. And so if you're wondering what the requirements are for using the latest npm-cli and staying evergreen, currently those are the engines that we have defined and that we support in terms of the matrix of node versions that you'll need on your system to use the npm-cli. And last but not least, because our team is working so hard, in the last month or so, we've actually shipped 3 minor versions, introducing some net new features, one of which we're going to dive into a little bit more here. But adding flags for workspaces to interact with the root. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, and sort of how we delineate between your root of your project and sort of the workspaces itself. Also doing some refactoring work, but the big ship that we had actually last week, so this is the first time we're really talking about this, is overrides. This has been in development, like I said, for almost a year or so. We had a spec that was written over a year ago now, and we're really happy that we finally were able to land it. So if you want to get the latest version of the npm-cli, it's been the same way for a number of years now. You can run npm-i, npm-g if you've already got Node installed, or you can go grab one of the Node distributions, and the npm-cli comes pre-baked into every Node version. So let's dive into workspaces. The benefits of really adopting workspaces and sort of a monorepo sort of architecture is there's many of them, but the 5 here listed are sort of what I consider to be the biggest wins for moving to and starting to adopt workspaces. So being able to link, build, and test your processes and sort of standardizing the tooling across those projects is a huge win. And as a maintenance, I would say the other major win for me and our team is, as a maintainer of multiple packages, the maintenance burden often increases with every new package that you distribute, every new project you distribute, based on how many repos that you now have to monitor and how many communication channels you now have increased in terms of the issues and PRs that will land against those projects. So bringing those back into a single project can sometimes make a lot of sense if they are relative or they have shared dependencies that you'd like to manage. And there's a number of huge wins, I think, for a lot of folks that migrate to workspaces or end up using some workspace tooling. And these are just the top 5 that I could think of preparing for today. So I talked a little bit before about the idea that there was some relationships that we uncovered and some definitions that we wanted to sort of delineate within our own workspace implementation. And so I have this graph and this chart that I usually share when people ask me about, what is the difference between the root folder of my project? What is a workspace dependency? What's the difference between that and a bundled dependency? And this little graph really shows that well. It's pretty straightforward. We take an approach that's more similar, I would say, to Yarn and Lerna's sort of implementation here. But having this definition and using this terminology, I think, really helps. And of course, on the left-hand side there, you can see how simple it is to define workspaces within package JSON. And yeah, it's pretty easy to get started. So, okay, so cross our fingers. I'm going to try to really showcase some of the amazing sort of tooling and sort of functionality of using workspaces, starting from scratch. And I've got some commands here. We'll see if I can run them, and let's all cross our fingers that the demo gods will be nice to us. So switching over to my terminal here, I've got a demo folder open. I've also got the docs website here. So if you're interested more on how to use workspaces, you can go to docs.npm.js.com, and you can find the workspaces section under using npm. And we have a number of examples and also some information on how to define. Workspaces definitions also support globbing patterns. That's not something I'm going to use today in my demo, but it's something that many people do use just for ease of use in terms of defining, the nested projects that live within your workspace. So let's jump into our demo. So I've got two projects that I'm going to, or two folders here that I'm going to dive into and try to showcase the power of workspaces. And I'm going to quickly just open this up in my editor on my second screen. Awesome. Okay, so let's dive in. So when you're starting a new project, and I'll go into the workspaces folder here. When you're starting a new project, npm provides to you, and I'll increase my screen here just for folks in the recording. npm provides you with a subcommand called npm init. And so when I'm starting a new project, I can run npm init, and it can start me through a sort of interactive flow to answer a whole bunch of questions. But usually a lot of people do this, and I do this myself, is you just take whatever the default is. And so here I'm going to pass the -y flag to essentially just say, give me all the defaults and create the package.json file. And here I am. I've got now a package.json file. I'm starting to work. I'm starting to build my project. Let's get started. So what's really interesting about the workspace flags is that with npm init, we've now been able to provide you with a mechanism to quickly scaffold a number of workspaces that will essentially add to this root project levels package.json file. So let's show you how that works. So let's say I have this project that I've just started, and I want to create both a application workspace and a server workspace. So the two ends here, I want to do some server-side development. I want to have dependencies that are only specific to that part. And I have an application that's going to have a whole bunch of different dependencies over there. So I can do npm init -w or -y again. So take all those defaults, and then I can provide either the full named workspace field, or I can provide -w, which is an alias to workspace, and provide the name app. And I can also provide the name server. And you can actually add as many workspace definitions here, or provide as many workspace args as you'd like to quickly scaffold a number of workspaces. So there you go. I ran that, and what's actually happened here is its output, npm init is output that is run and created two different package.jsons in net new folders within my project. So it's created an app folder and a server folder. And if I look at the package.json at the root level, it's actually created definitions here for app and server, which map to those directories. So great, I've already quickly scaffolded my project. Now I'd like to do something, right? So one of the first things people often do is they want to test their software. So we can quickly do that here in the root project. And of course, the default output for npm init is to tell you that you have no test specified, which is, it errors out and it tells you, hey, maybe you should start to write some tests. Maybe you should implement some test coverage. So I can actually also run npm test and all of the npm subcommands against workspaces quite easily. I can use the workspaces flag, which is different from workspace, in which I'm actually defining an explicit workspace to run a command against, but workspaces will run npm test against all of the workspaces defined. So again, we have a shorthand alias for that, and that's called -ws. So if I run that, you can see that, okay, now I've got two errors that are outputting because I'm both running this command in the app workspace as well as the server workspace. This is really powerful. This is really interesting because all of the npm commands now support workspaces and the workspace configs. So let's keep building on this. Let's actually start to see what else we could do. So one of the cool commands we introduced in npm 7 was actually npm-exec. And this is essentially the exact same tooling and sort of user flow as you would have with npx, which is a bin that we distributed separately for npm, but which comes with every node distribution now as well. So if I run npm-exec, I can run any arbitrary sort of shell script that I would like against my workspaces. And you can imagine this is like a very powerful, very like, power user feature to be able to do this. And so if I run, let's say npm-exec-c, which says it means command, then I'm going to pass, let's say, the current working directory. I can see when I run it in the root, it's just going to give me the path to my current workspaces directory. But if I provide the workspaces flag, now you can imagine it's going to run and show me, hey, I've run it against app and server. So you can imagine the kinds of unbounded scripts you can write with npm-exec with workspaces. Now, another new command we actually introduced in npm v7 was npm-pkg. So npm-pkg allows you to get and set values in your package JSON. So again, thinking about the different types of user flows we unlock when we bring npm-pkg together with workspaces, it's pretty awesome. So here's an example of me just getting the name field from the package JSON in the root. And as you can see, it's going to say, oh, the name of this package was workspaces. But we can also run, let's say, npm get version, and that's going to get 1.0.0. And that's great. Again, we're just getting the root information from the root package JSON, providing the workspace flag. Workspaces flag returns essentially all the versions of all the workspaces, which is really interesting because now you can imagine workflows where you actually get and or set the version or other fields within package JSON for your workspaces. So here, instead of get, I'm actually going to write set, and I'm going to set the version to, let's say, 2.0.0 against all the workspaces. And so if I run get again, I can see that now all of my versions of all my workspaces are now 2.0.0, which is really awesome. You can imagine how this kind of scales when you're trying to keep packages up to date, when you're trying to sort of keep some consistency within your projects. The workspaces flag and PKG are great tools to be working together. So in terms of, let's get back to sort of that testing narrative. Let's go and use npm install now to actually pull in, let's say, a testing library. So if I just pull in, let's say, just with npm install, so npm install just, npm is going to go fetch it and add it as a dependency to the root project. There we go. Now what we can do, and I'm sorry, I just cleared my window, is we can run npm pkg, and we're actually going to set our scripts. So you can imagine with manipulating any of the package JSON fields, one of the key things we see people do is actually add and remove or modify script run script values. So here we're going to change the actual default test script to use just now. And we can apply that again using the workspace flag to all of our workspaces. So here I have, if we do get, we can also see that this was applied now. So now you can see that now I've switched the scripts, the test script in each one of my workspaces to actually be running jest. And I can put this some arbitrary sort of test command in here, anything I want, really powerful. So now if I want to actually run this test, I actually want to do npm run or npm test, I can do that across all my workspaces like I showed before. But what might be nice is I don't need to, let's say I'm a front-end developer, and I don't need to really run the test for the back end because I'm only working in the front end. You can actually use, again, the workspace specific command to delineate between which workspaces you want to run that command in. So here I go run npm test, and I've got some, and of course, Just is telling me I don't have any tests written, but you can see that it runs Just, and it only outputs once because it's only running within the app workspace. Awesome. So now one of the biggest capabilities that comes with sort of this scope with using workspaces is actually filtered installs. So this is a huge thing that we've been asking has been asked of us for quite a long time. It's very similar to shallow checkouts from like Git shallow checkouts. npm filtered installs, you basically will only reify or make real and install the packages of the workspace that you define. So here's an example of that. So when I want to, let's say, change the test suite of my server-side workspace because I have a whole team that doesn't like Jest, they want to use tap, node tap. I can run npm-i tap to install the dependency, and in this case, I'm actually going to install this dependency into the server workspace. So I define the -w and then the server workspace, and now tap will be installed specifically into the server workspace and not be installed at the root level and not be installed in the application or app workspace. So now if I run, let's just quickly do a cat of the server and package JSON. So you can see that tap is now defined as dependency there. And if I run npm test and just for the server, I can see that now I'm going to, still get the Jest output. So now I need to update my set scripts again. So I will quickly change my npm pkg, using npm pkg, I'll quickly change the test script to use tap. And I'll do that against the server. There we go. And now if I run npm test again for the server, you should see the output from tap. Again, it's complaining because I haven't actually written any tests. I've just started to add the infrastructure for running tests. So you can see that this is very powerful to be able to install and directly add dependencies to various workspaces. But I really want to show you, the fact that we are only installing specific dependencies for the specific workspaces you define when you run npm install with one of the workspace configs enabled. So let me quickly blow away my node modules and my package lock file here. And you can see now I just have a clean package JSON. The app and server workspaces are still there. And now when I run npm install and I do that with, let's say, the -w server, I'm only going to get the tap dependency being installed. I won't get Jest, I won't get anything that app has defined, and I actually won't get anything that the root has defined either. That is when we actually created, we created a separate flag for including the root workspace into the set that actually gets installed with npm install. So as you can see that we npm install added 242 packages. This actually would have been double. It's roughly around 500 if we run install without that scope or that filter of the workspace. And we think that this is a great opportunity for people that build tools or have different use cases for different dependencies that they may need to install in different circumstances. They can use workspaces for that. Great. And I'll quickly do npm-ls, and it should show you that, yes, it's going to fail because it doesn't have all the information it needs at the root level. But if I scope that to server, npm-ls should not error out and show you that tap actually was installed. So now you can start running and configuring and using anything with that server. I think that's it for workspaces. I'd love to jump back to my slide deck if I can. And awesome. So again, sort of to recap what I was showcasing there, the workspaces and workspace config arguments or flags were introduced in over time in the last major release line, which was npm v7, and now should be fully available if you are using npm v8. We introduced also no workspaces, which is a split, an argument in configuration explicitly to opt out of workspaces in case you're somehow deeply nested and somebody's configured something and you want to turn it off. And include workspace root actually will allow you to combine execution against your workspaces. Also include that execution in the workspace root as well. So you can do some really interesting and advanced user workflows using a combination of those flags. I know we're trying to get through a lot. I know this is very dense, so I apologize. But one of the biggest features that I think we've launched this past year, and actually just last week, is npm overrides. And we're going to talk a lot about this in the new year. So this is going to be a very high level sort of demo and talk through this capability. But npm overrides, essentially the benefits of this is to be able to swap out and help give you sort of a power user feature to override when necessary, dependencies, or swap them out, or patch them, or fork them, or even in the worst case scenario, potentially even, or the best case scenario, to help prevent malware or something like that from leaking into your projects. So it's a really sharp tool, sharp knife tool that we imagine people are going to use quite a bit. And we also, sort of built this tool in mind based on some of the work that had previously been there with Yarn's resolutions, although our implementation is a little bit different. Specifically, the way in which you write an override is a lot, we consider it to be a lot more, I would say, flexible. It's a little bit more freeform. It's more composable, and very interesting sort of overrides that you can write with the way that we've implemented it here. So again, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope the demo gods give us some luck. Switching back into my terminal here, you can see also some documentation in npmjs.com, specifically under the package JSON docs. We've outlined the overrides field and how it's implemented, also given you a number of examples of how to use it. I'm only going to dive into sort of one of the use cases that we find people and think people will be using overrides for. But yeah, feel free to check it out. We'll be adding more docs, more tutorials, and be talking a lot more about overrides in the new year. And if you're interested in how this actually came to be and sort of the design process around overrides, you can go to the npm-rcs repository on github.com. That's /npm/rcs. And inside the accepted field, or folder, you'll actually find the specification for this feature. So if you don't know, the npm-cli is an open source project. We try to do as much product design in the open and source feedback from the community. And so this was one of those examples that we had been hearing for a long time. People really wanted override support, and so we think we've developed something really cool. So jumping back into my terminal, I'm going to jump over to the overrides folder. In this folder, I actually have a pre-existing package JSON, which gives just a narrow scope of what we see a lot in a lot of people's projects today, which is they're defining a dependency like React that happens to have a very large plugin ecosystem, a very large ecosystem of dependent or peer dependent packages. And here I've added also another project called React Select. And in this case, there's conflicting versions and dependencies here that when I go to actually npm install, I'm going to get an error because npm now is trying to resolve peer deps. So historically, in the last year or two, we've been telling people to use legacy peer deps flags to basically ignore these warnings, or to try to use force to allow npm to run in a mode that tries to resolve peer dependency conflicts. So now with overrides, we've provided another mechanism for the end users to essentially self-serve and try to dictate which versions of the dependencies and try to resolve conflicts themselves if they feel like they know what really the version is they want between these two conflicting versions. And this will help also with transitive dependencies, which end users really can't control and don't maintain even the projects that they're depending upon. So in my package.json, I'm going to quickly add an override spec here to define the version of React and React DOM that I would like to use. So if I cap my package here again, you can see that here I've defined the overrides field in package.json, and here I've nested the React select package identifier to say anytime that I see React select, I would like it to use this version of React and this version of React DOM. And what's really interesting here is something that we just introduced, which is the reference key. So like our reference character in terms of the money sign. So that $ will, and the name of the package will basically make a reference to the existing dependency I have defined, which in this case is React, and use that version and that spec in place of the version that might be getting tried to be pulled in by, in this case, React select. So if I now try to run npm install, you're going to notice that there's no more uresolve warnings. And if I run npm-ls and React, so list all the versions of React that are installed, you'll notice that they're all pinned now to the latest version of 16.14. And everything is deduplicated and great. Now I can get on to work and move on with my life and all those dependency conflicts. So that's overrides. There's many use cases to that. If I could switch back to my slides, that'd be great. And I guess before I talk about what's next, we think, again, overrides is a huge, very sharp and very awesome tool that we hope people will start to use and give us feedback on. But I did want to talk about what was coming next, what's coming down the pipeline for the new year. And I should note that this is all subject to change, but since the talk or demo was called Workspaces, Overrides, and More, I thought I'd give y'all a little bit of a look into what is coming down our pipeline. Come in 2022, our team is really focused on shipping and continuing to deliver on the current major release that we support, which is V8, and some things that are going to come in the new year are on isolated mode, which is very similar to PNPM's reification mode, which we think is going to really help folks that use workspaces or have mono repos and just have tons and tons and tons of package dependencies that get pulled in when they install. And this really we think is going to address a lot of performance issues. And then later into the year, we're hoping to ship the next major version of the CLI V9 with a whole bunch of new capabilities. And within that major release line, we're hoping to really ship some interesting features. One I'm very, very excited about is the dependency selector syntax. And there's a number of UI and UX improvements we're hoping to make to commands like install and audit to make things clear and actionable for our users. If you're interested on how we're actually queuing these things up, you can join us. We actually run weekly calls every Wednesday. We're taking a break for the holidays here and taking a bit of vacation, but we'll be coming back in the new year. I believe it's January 13th is the next call that we have queued up. And sorry, it should say Wednesdays. It says Thursdays there. But Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern is when we run open RFC calls. Everyone in the community is allowed to join and come contribute to the design and development of the npm-cli. And I would just want to give a huge shout out to my team. There are some stellar developers and engineers that are behind this work. And so huge congrats to them, as well as the contributors that we've seen over the last year or so. We saw an extra 100 new contributors. I think it was more than 100, maybe closer to 150 new contributors start to give back and help us build on sort of the goals of the npm-cli. And I think that's it. That's it for me. If you want to learn more, follow me on any of the social media platforms. My Twitter username is Darcy, and my GitHub username is Darcy Clarke. So yeah, I think that wraps it up.
Thank you so much, Darcy. That was super insightful. I appreciate the demos. And today was a good day. The demo gods were in our favor. So thank you so much for everyone who watched and is joining us now. Keep in mind, this will be published into our official GitHub YouTube channel. So if you wanted to go back and take a look at how these things came to be, you can go ahead and watch the content again. Shout out to all those new contributors. Super excited that the npm-cli is open source. So if you would like to contribute, like to participate, catch one of those calls up in the coming new year and get involved. What a great project. Thank you for the focus on performance for next year and dependency selecting. That always like music to my ears. So it sounds like a fantastic plan. So if you want to learn more about Darcy and his work, be sure to follow him on any of the socials here. And don't forget, go check out that repo. It's all open source. So if you want to contribute, be 101. You can be one of the ones getting a shout out next year. So thank you so much, Darcy. I appreciate everyone who's watched us here today. Have a great end of the year, and we'll catch you again. January 7th will be our next demo days. We're going to be talking with the one and only OWASP Zap proxy creator, Simon Bennett, and we'll be talking about cool security things. So we hope to see you then. Thank you, Darcy. I hope this was good for you, and we'll see you next year. Fantastic. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Take care.